Okay, so here we are back in the letter. We are now going into Zach's chapter, and I need to point out we are following ending 2 for Hannah, which plays out as you see here. But, I'll just explain stuff as we go. I played a little bit into this chapter already, so I'll comment on a couple things I observed, particularly his apartment. The pleasant aroma hits me long before I cross the threshold. Faint, but light and warm, a reminder of what home is. Pa's stern but commending gaze, Ma's tender smiles, the sunlight filtering through the eaves in the morning, and the distinct smell of cinnamon and vanilla as it drifts through the air every time something cooks from the room. The room. Our room. Ma and Pa's pride and joy. My sister and I too, eventually. But we ain't allowed there. Not yet. Not until we're taller or older. Not until we've learned how to take care of ourselves, and not burn our hands or reach the cupboards without having to be lifted.
But a little peek wouldn't hurt, yeah?
The floorboards are cold under my feet more than it usually is. The walls more forbidding than what I'm used to. Farther and farther the room goes. Ma singing ceases, and Pa.
No, please wait. I'll be good. I'll sleep on time. Don't go.
I can't hear Pa. Not above the raucous clanging and the deafening roar of gunshots, nor the screams replacing the comforting soft melodies. There is only the blinding fear. When my foot slips, the Red Sea that catches me is bitter and frigid, but the blood that drips in my hand is warm, warm, warm. It ain't my blood. The walls tumble and everything goes quiet. So I'll answer the phone. I want to point out there are 3 things in this room that are a little messed up. See if you can spot them. 2 of them are related, by the way. It takes a few months for everything to fall into place, but for my eyes to adjust to the light streaming into the room. Despite the pleasant chill the AC brings, my shirt is clinging tightly to me, and my blanket a tangled mess around my throat. It's one of those nights again when sleep passes like a blink and is plagued with vague, fuzzy thoughts. I lift a hand to rub away the drowsiness from my eyes, although it does little to relieve the gritty, burning sensation from my eyelids. Outside, the sun has yet to peek over the horizon, but night has already given way to the cool morning light, washing everything in subtle gray hues. At this hour, the entire city remains unstirring. Ordinarily, waking up before my own alarm means abusing the snooze button, twice or thrice, just to catch those precious few extra minutes of sleep. But the persistent ringing makes it impossible now.
This better be good.
And then I'm not going to show too much about him, but you have your first junction here based on what happened to Izzy. That determines what you're getting called for. So you can see this is where I went. Groggily, I scramble for the bag sitting at the foot of the bed. The ringing still hasn't stopped, even as I fish the phone out, and Ash's name flashes brightly on the screen when I turn it on. Must be pretty urgent if he hasn't dropped the call yet.
Where are you?
And this gives you an achievement right here. Please hurry or something like that.
Ashton, it's 6 in the morning. Sun hasn't even risen. Hell, my brain ain't even awake yet. What do you need?
Get your ass here, pronto.
Here? Hold on. Can't this wait until I'm actually awake?
No, Rebecca's not in a good state, and...
His voice hitches, and I fail to catch the last of what he's saying over the sudden racket on the other side of the line. When the noise dies down, however, he does not continue. This abrupt change in his tone, the unexpected hesitance to speak, puts me on the edge, and a different kind of anxiety clings to me. Something's wrong.
Here is where, Ash.
Okay, so... First thing, what time is it? 6 a.m. That must be some sort of weird metric clock type thing, if that's 6. Now, the second problem is, we have a window over here, and a window over here. So looking at the trees, we can see he is not on the ground floor. He either lives in an apartment on top of something, or he has the most uniquely designed apartment building out there. And if you don't quite get what I'm talking about, for the windows to be on opposite sides, that means for the apartments to be connected, they have to go either over here, where his neighbor would be, and then the other one's over here, which would mean the door is either on this wall or this wall. And the big problem with this is then you have to think about how thin this apartment building is, because the entire thing's only as wide as this room. So I don't know if that was intentional, if we're going to be able to see his place from the outside, but that seems like a bit of an oversight. One of these windows shouldn't be here, because then it would be that the neighbors are over here, and then the apartments are actually stacked longwise, which will basically maximize the amount of people living there. But anyway, those are two inconsistencies I spotted. Let's see what else comes up.
Apartment. Rebecca's. And Isabella's. Just get here, please.
He drops the call before I can ask more. Maybe it's just me or my sleep-addled brain, but in that short moment he sounds almost as if he's pleading. The thought alone does not ease the lump of dread gripping my insides already heavy with fear. But despite the questions currently swimming inside my head, I waste no time in getting dressed, the rest of the day's plans and scheduled meetings effectively forgotten. Whatever lies ahead, I hope this ain't one of those times when my intuition is right. The murmurs of the small crowd milling on the streets are loud against my ears, a contrast to the sleepy, laid-back reputation this neighborhood has built throughout the years. Despite sitting close to downtown Luxbourne, Salemwell Quarter never did quite attract the loud crowd common to the city. Isabella mentioned once how the quiet bothered her in the first few years here. She has grown so used to the routine clangor of the slums in her hometown, it's become the closest she has to a lullaby. She never did quite adjust to the kind of mum Salemwell had. Yet now, I highly doubt she'd like this kind of commotion either, in her own apartment complex no less. Moreover, where's Rebecca in all this? I was hoping either one of them will be able to give me an explanation, but a number of police cars and an ambulance are parked along the street closest to the compound. Given Ashton's tone over the phone, I already half expected their presence here. What's a little surprising are the news vans lined up on the road opposite.
What in the blazes is the press doing here?
A cold stone at the pit of my stomach grows more unwelcoming with each step I take, bringing a sour taste to my mouth. A handful of the curious has flocked near the building, probably waiting for something interesting to happen. Carefully, I weave my way through the thin crowd, only to be halted soon by perimeter tape enclosing the three-story apartment. My eyes dart around the busy landing on the other side. It buzzes with activity as several officers move in and out of the building, most of them in white suits stained at the hems and gloves with a striking shade of red. I try not to think where those came from, but an idea has already planted itself firmly in my head long before I can stop myself. Ash must be in there somewhere, if this is that kind of case. I wait. And after what seems like a lifetime, he emerges from the building, his own gloves smeared with the same red shade the others had on theirs, and exhaustion evident on his face. Briefly he scans the area, but quickly averts his gaze when he catches my eye. Without so much as a wave or an acknowledgement, he starts to walk off in the opposite direction while reading off the papers he has on hand with complete focus. I get that he's busy, but that's on a whole different level of weird. Not 3 steps later, though, he seems to think better of it. He pauses before wheeling around and walking back towards me. This kind of hesitance, while not unheard of from him, is only enough to fuel the sick dread clawing at my insides. He doesn't meet my eyes when he speaks either.
Sorry you had to be greeted by this.
You say that like this is something new to me. Come on, dude, after all these years, every time I see your name on the caller ID, I'm already half expecting something shitty went down again somewhere.
An expression both pained and weary crosses his face momentarily before hiding back under his usual mask of indifference. The rest of my laughter dies from my lips, replaced by a sound devoid of any mirth. Try as I might to keep the talk light, the thick atmosphere has become stifling at some point. I've always known how taxing his work in the police force has become since his promotion, seen with my own eyes as a matter of fact. But right now, have things really gotten this bad for him lately?
Can't say the sight of forensics is a pleasant thing to see in the morning. Anyway, where's Rebecca? You mentioned she's not in a good state. And then, we have this. Please don't tell me she's somehow gotten herself in.
Nothing's happened to her. They're just getting her statement. They should let her go soon.
He gestures with his head towards an ambulance parked a short distance from us. Her strikingly familiar hair is visible between the two officers standing nearby. Although I can't see her face, the tired droop on her shoulders is impossible to miss. Still, to see her unharmed is relief enough.
Glad to hear that. What's going on here anyway? Seems like you've got yourself another big case on your plate this time.
It's been classified as a homicide, but nothing conclusive yet.
A homicide? Another? Right here? Figures while the press is here. No, I don't think any of the two girls will appreciate you bringing the whole precinct here. Bella especially. Never did quite forgive Devlin, no matter how much she laughs about it now.
Isabella's not here. Zach.
The flicker of grief. Momentary in its passing, but it's there across his face at the mention of her. And in that single lapse, the stone in my stomach has firmly lodged itself up in my throat.
Ash, what's really going on here?
A hunch, that's all it is. But if there's anything I've learned from all these years, it's that asking the hardest questions are unavoidable if you want to get answers. Not in a world as harsh as ours.
Ashton, I asked you a question. Where is Isabella?
When he looks at me, I already know the answer. God damn, I already know it, but I want to hear it straight from him.
She's dead.
2 words. None of it registers.
Dude, you know full well I find jokes like that in bad taste. If you need me curious about this, you got it done way before that came out of your mouth. Now answer the question properly.
I already did. What else do you want me to tell you?
The truth! Stop shitting with me and tell me what this is all about! God help me if no one tells me what's going on. I swear
I don't have time for this, Zach. I've got a lot of stuff waiting to be dealt with right now. I need you to make yourself useful and stay with Rebecca after they're done with her.
Let me through.
My hand's already on the tape, poised to raise it, but he's quick to move in front to bar me from crossing to the other side. It only serves to raise the ire bubbling in me. The tone he takes doesn't help either.
I can't let you do that. This place is off limits until the investigation's over.
It wasn't a request. Let me through.
What could you possibly want to?
You said she's dead! I want to see it with my own eyes, Ash. I'm not buying any of your bullshit until I've seen it with my own eyes. Now move aside.
Or what? You'll break the tape? March in there like some criminal above the law? Because I'm telling you that's what you'll be once you do. And I won't be able to keep you out of trouble this time, no matter how innocent you are.
Screw the rules! That is my friend in there! Just the other day I was talking with her. How can she be dead right now? How sure are you that she is? All I'm asking is proof, goddammit!
It's not that simple. We're following a protocol here. And friend or not, you have to stay in line while forensics finishes documenting the victim's body and every fucking thing in the goddamn scene. Now back off, sit down, and let us do our work. Don't make this harder for us, Zach.
What? You make it sound like you don't even know her. Ain't she your friend too?
It's not that. You don't understand. Right now, she's nothing but a dead body. We need to...
All I saw is red. And this is where you get the Falcon Punch achievement. I'd like to say I'm exaggerating, but that is legitimately what it is called. My anger subsided just as quickly as it erupted. Next thing I know, he's on the ground, nursing a bloody lip and a bruised cheek with an unreadable expression in his eyes. My fist falls to my side, limp and forgotten. The papers and photos he's been holding onto all this time flutter uselessly to the floor around us, as if to mock me. His rage would have been better, far easier to deal with than the wall he suddenly built up around himself. With it, there's only hurtful words and ugly truths, no puzzling guessing games that leaves you thinking for days on end. I shouldn't have let my temper get the better of me either. I want to apologize, say something to remedy the situation, but my mouth has gone thick with fear and remorse all at once. I can only look at my feet, no longer staying close to the boundary I threatened to cross earlier. And that is when I see it. Understanding dawns on me, violent enough to shake me. With trembling hands, I reach for the scattered photographs off the pavement. Hey look, Izzy lost weight! A sick, burning feeling immediately rises up to my throat. Purely on instinct, my eyes move in every corner of the print, searching for any sign of tampering, for any discrepancy, for any hope that this might just be an awful prank. But try as I might, I can't find it. Ripped apart. There's no other word for it. She barely looks like herself, in fact. I wouldn't have noticed her if Ashton hadn't mentioned something earlier. When I think of her, all I see is this person who has rarely ever lost the cheer in her voice. Often upbeat, rarely dispirited. Now she's nothing more than a mangled mess of blood, flesh, and splintered bones. Her head is bent backwards, the eyes and mouth open in a silent, empty scream. A hole in her torso, big enough to expose her insides, gapes open at me. It is as if a savage beast has torn it viciously open and feasted on it, every organ mutilated and butchered beyond all recognition. Blood pools from the open wound, drenching her and the floor in a deep shade of red. I can smell and taste it even without being there. When I finally look back at him, Ashton's shoulders have gone rigid. His eyebrows are drawn into a tight frown. His jaws are clenched tight. I recognize the frustration, his frustration, for what it is. It's not that Ash doesn't want me to see her. He simply doesn't want her to be seen in this state. This ain't how he wants her to be remembered. I struggle to find the words, anything to fix this god-awful misunderstanding. This ain't what we should be doing right now. But he only looks away as he pushes himself off the ground.
Ash, I don't know what came over me.
I won't be pressing assault charges considering the situation. I've got things to check with the other officers. But don't go thinking you can easily cross this line without me here. The other police types won't be as forgiving. Go check on Rebecca. She's probably the one who took it the hardest.
Without another word, Ash gathers the papers littering the ground, ducks under the perimeter tape, and walks away without so much as a backward glance. Doesn't he remember that the photos are still in my hand? In hindsight, I could follow him. I should follow him. Return these to him, apologize, and maybe attempt a decent conversation without butting our heads or getting into a trivial squabble over this of all things. But he's right, damn it. He's right in that we're not the only two people going through this. And right now, Rebecca has to bear losing a friend all on her own. So we're gonna follow Ashton. In the end, the need to fix whatever rift I've unintentionally opened between us wins out. The punch might have been an instinctive reaction, brought about by high emotions after getting caught in the moment, but at the end of the day, someone has to ask for forgiveness. I still need answers too, and who better to get it from than Ashton? I've already lost sight of the guy, though he shouldn't be too hard to find around here. Thankfully, the crowd's already thinned, most having already lost interest in the commotion that entails the discovery of a crime scene and left. A few do linger, just reporters finishing things up for the news and waiting for some final words from the authorities. If this incident is not yet all over the news this morning, it will be soon.
Like a pack of wolves descending on a piece of meat.
That thought alone rankles. No sooner, I find him standing close on a police van parked nearby. Or rather, hear him. Just as I'm about to make the turn, an unfamiliar voice stops me in my tracks.
Forensics say it may take longer than usual. One piece of a long-ass process this is gonna be. Don't give me that look, Frey. You've seen how terrible the shape of the body is in. Almost spilled my guts out when I saw it. And I've seen a lot of dead bodies in my life.
I can't see who the other person is, but it's likely the officer he mentioned earlier. When Ashton answers, it's in the same composed manner he typically carries with him, as though this is simply another case for him to solve.
This was done by a professional, Abigail.
Sure it is. Or a wild animal. Maybe some monster, like the ones you'll find in a flick.
Don't be ridiculous. This is far from usual. But there's certainly an explanation to it. A logical one. Consider what we have right now. The place is clean, has been cleaned. No fingerprints, no hair, or any other way to indicate someone else has been in the apartment aside from Isabella, the victim.
Please don't tell me you've never heard of the Anselm Butcher case.
Didn't the trail for that case go cold?
Until recently, yeah? Remember the woman from the other day? Not as gruesome, but same sitch. Help me everywhere.
Sitch being short for situation if you're not familiar with the jargon.
CSI guys also found a weird note with the same thing written in Santos's room. I'd bet my boots Chief's gonna flip once he reads the reports. He never did catch who committed those murders years ago, and now his favorite serial killer is back. Bless Cooper's and Santos's poor souls. Some suspense mystery thriller this is turning out to be. Or a huge pain in the ass. Chief better give us a raise after this.
What did you say?
Chief better give us a raise? You know we're overdue for one.
No, before that. Say that again.
The note? It's with the forensics now if you want to check.
Not that one. A name. You mentioned a name. Cook? Coombs?
The Cooper woman? Oh yeah, you weren't there. Christ, Frey, at least check the reports for the other cases. Let's see. Rose Pamela Cooper, real estate agent, found dead in her flat the other day. Same modus operandi. Scene was clean, blood and entrails everywhere, whoop-de-doo, there goes my lunch, and a message written in blood.
Ashton falls silent. I can almost hear the gears turning in his head at the information.
The job. Her job. Where did you say she was working?
I didn't say anything. But it's Briar Realty, same one as this girl. Might be connected, huh?
They were the agents who handled the sale of the mansion to the Wrights.
Yep. Big news, that one property. Got a relative working in that real estate company once. He was laid off a year ago, along with a few dozen employees. I actually thought they're about to go under. Guess not. But 2 employees from the same company dead in the span of a week. If I didn't know any better, I'd say they did something fishy with a deal and things somehow got awkward with the client, if you know what I mean. This might be the result.
Isabella's not that kind of person!
His tone alone makes me pause. I've seen him annoyed before, frustrated even. Sometimes makes for a funny sight. But on a job? He's shared a few of his cases with me before. I'd like to think I know how he works by now. And he has never once taken this kind of attitude in any of those.
Whoa there, hotshot. Calm down. I was just thinking out loud. Don't get snippy with me. And how the fuck do you even know she's not?
I know she's not. I wasn't... Sorry. I've got to file this report. I'm leaving this to you. I'll be back later. Keep me updated.
Figures. Go get some rest while you're at it. We've been at this since last night. Even I can't keep myself awake that long. You're still young, a hard-working kid. But don't kill yourself over every case you're handling, got it?
Thanks. Not this one, I'm afraid.
An irrational panic surges in me at the sound of his footsteps. It ain't my intention to eavesdrop, if this can still be called eavesdropping when they're talking loud enough for me to hear. I certainly can leave, but what good will that do? In any case, I still need to give these photographs back to him. Except he doesn't notice me when he passes. Even with the tentative hand I raise to get his attention, he continues to walk with a purpose, each stride quick and decisive. The look on his face, however, there are really no other words for it. He looks pissed as hell. And if he was the kind of person, I'd wager good money that the next one who annoys him will end up injured in some capacity.
Ash, hold on!
He stops, appears about to let out a half-dozen expletives despite his restraint, before his tight expression eases into a small frown upon seeing me.
Zach? Didn't I say...
You forgot these.
I wave the photos in front of him. Recognition slips across his features before he walks over and takes them off my hands without so much as a thanks. Neither of us speak while he clips it all back to his file. What else is there to talk about? A jest will be too inappropriate given the gravity of the situation. An apology right now, despite my intent when I sought him out, will be too early, too easy, too hasty. Not with their minds still reeling from the news. Not with all of us still finding ways to cope with our own grief. And this is how he does it, with feigned indifference and an air of aloof detachment. I can't fault him for that.
You heard?
What? Oh, yeah. Of course, I didn't mean to overhear sensitive stuff. But you left these, and you and that officer were...
It's fine. You need to hear from someone eventually. Better to hear from people who have the fact instead of some random gossip.
What happens now, Ash?
I'll get to the bottom of this, I promise. Even if I have to do it with my own hands, I'll make sure the person who did this will pay.
How? Do you think this has something to do with that other case?
Can't say. But make sure you stay far away from the Wrights. We've got enough problems as it is.
As you can imagine, I will be doing the opposite.
I don't need another one adding more to it.
Who? Wait, brakes, Ash, brakes. What? What about those things on the wall? Maybe she's right. Maybe it has something to do with what she's been telling us all this time. You saw the contents of the paper. What if it's...
Don't go thinking that the stupid letter is related or even a clue. This has more to it than some curse, damn it. I should have paid more attention. If I knew this would lead to this, I would have... I have to go. I'll leave Rebecca to you.
Yet as I watch him walk away, a different kind of worry weaves itself into me. Ash can handle himself, he's proven that time and time again. But the way he carries himself at this moment, this frustration, perhaps even anger, now seeping into his every word. Years ago, early in our acquaintance, he said keeping a cool head is a priority in his line of work. Letting things get too personal should be the last thing that should happen in any case he's handling. I believed him then. Now, with everything as they are, I hope he'd remember those words for himself. Although it's small and begs for a little cleaning and repair, it is, at the end of the day, the closest I have to a respite. Sure, my sister would have a thing or two to say about the mess every time she visits, but it's still home to me. A mild draft sweeps into the room as I close the door behind me, slightly disturbing the papers on the nearby fridge. Most of them schedules, lists, and tasks for the next few days. Something to keep me busy while I sort things out. Sort myself out. And now with what happened to Isabella, something to temporarily take my mind off things. A lone note flutters by my feet, the letters on the surface glaring at me with mute intensity. Ermengarde Mansion, H. Wright, 11 a.m. After Ashen's warnings, they all hold a different meaning now. The next 2 days rush by in a blur, altogether leaving a collective mess of work suddenly piling up and new unexpected acquaintances, or friends. Depends on how you look at it, really. Either way, I'm stuck developing these photos at 3 in the morning to reach a deadline set by an overeager art director. Don't get me wrong, Julius is good and has a vision, and he knows what he wants. But damn, he can be too enthusiastic sometimes.
Doesn't matter when you couldn't sleep anyway.
There's nothing new in it, of course. After years of working as a freelance photographer, it's simply something I've grown used to. Get to know people, build a client base, do good work, and cash in some late hours if need be. Rinse and repeat. It certainly takes a while to get some footing in the field, but it's the kind of thing that pays off in the long run as long as you keep at it. Given enough time, you might end up with big names on your client list. Names like the Wrights in particular. I never did pay much attention to them, but it's virtually impossible not to hear about them when a local news channel or paper has something to say on their name. A party here, an acquisition there. Sometimes it's a new business venture, other times it's the everyday gossip that typically follows popular people like them. Not in a million years did I ever imagine I would end up working for such a high-profile couple. And between that and the fuss that comes with, it leaves me no time to ponder over whatever happened to Isabella or why Ash is so adamant we keep away from the pair.
They do seem like the good folk, though, despite the whole fame thing.
Sure, there was a rumor running around years ago about him being involved in some business scandal. But just like every gossip blown out of proportion by the media, nothing came of it, and eventually it simply died down. Much is definitely left to be said for the husband, but I doubt a woman like Miss Wright would pick him if he doesn't have any good points at all. And then, I don't know if the term Mrs. doesn't really, or the abbreviation Mrs. doesn't exist in British English, but she is married, I need to point out, so it's still supposed to be Mrs. Wright, even though this is usually the abbreviation for Miss. Mrs. Wright. Hannah herself, though. She ain't particularly bad the way the press makes her out to be. A bit too forward for a married woman, maybe, but not as bad as what's on the tabloids. Not that I ever read those. Ashton wouldn't give me flack for just staring at one. Rubbish, she called them once. I think he's just pissed because they often put the local police in a bad light. Although with a life as public as the Wrights, no wonder it's the woman who often gets the crappy end of the stick. I can't help but feel sorry for her. She's a real nice person when given the chance. Heck, she might have even ended up friends with Rebecca and Isabella too if they weren't living worlds apart. Probably. The beep quickly pulls me back before my thoughts travel any further. In one practice motion, I carefully place the wet print I'm holding on a dry rack and amble over my makeshift darkroom to get to the last photos from the water bath. Inside the converted broom closet, the film processor lets out another soft clack before going on its standby mode. At its mouth, a lone photograph sits on the tray, barely visible with the lack of light. It's the last one tonight for the set Miss Wright requested. I don't usually make this a habit, giving away stuff, that is. It's bad for the business, no matter how well-intentioned or generous you are. This exception, however. She was nice enough to ask, after all, and was a good companion up until the awkward turn her little chit-chat is taken. Even if she didn't ask, I would have probably given her a few prints just for the hell of it. Ms. Wright ain't such a bad subject to begin with. And maybe that's just me, but for someone who has everything in the palm of her hands, all the money in the world, a loving husband, and a plenty big mansion to call home, she's lonely. She doesn't just appear like it. It shows in the tone of her voice, how she moves, and most certainly in her smiles. Always hidden behind the glamour for the world to never see. Sometimes for people like her, small things like these helps. A little reminder that the world can be kind too. Water drips from the paper as I blindly pick it up and gently lay it on another tray, holding a decent amount of photo flow. A few seconds of the solution is all it needs before it's ready for drying. No good rushing this last one, even if my body's already screaming for some decent snooze. My hand fumbles for the light switch, moving toward it with familiarity while I fish for a squeegee among the mess of tools on a drawer with the other. The bulb flickers twice before its glow settles and casts a soft light in the tiny space. When I glance back down, squeegee in hand, ready to finish the process and finally call it a night.
What on earth?
Yeah, she needs to work on her makeup. Her head is gone. Blurred and distorted beyond recognition, rather. The area completely smudged over, leaving no trace of the same sweet smile the good woman carried in all the previous prints.
Damn, that was too careless.
A common mistake to make, of course, if one is negligent enough to pick a newly processed photo in the dark like I apparently did. It has happened before. Loads of times, actually. But I still can't help but feel a small pang of frustration over one mistake a newbie would likely make. So if you don't know, this type of thing actually is common with the old way of developing pictures. It's not a thing with modern digital cameras. But like the single best example I can give of this, the most famous of all, is Slender Man. So if you don't know why that type of thing appears there, it's basically this type of error where it causes him to blur. Like it could be a normal man wearing a suit. The features will blur together from a distance, it'll just look like a pale white face. The sleeves will run long, and there you have it. With a sigh, I reach up for the switch again, intending to develop a new one from scratch.
It could pass off for one of those supernatural pictures they show on TV, though.
A memory clicks, one cursory thought in the sea of many, and a short yet distinct second from this day before. A glimpse is all I got, but it's enough to burn the image in my mind. There was a shadow. No. A woman. In her 20s, or early 30s maybe. But with how far gone her flesh alone has become, it's not possible to tell at first glance. The skin itself has already taken a sickly pale color, rotten in most parts, blood dripping from every open gash and lesion on her body. Bony hands grip Miss Wright's neck like a noose, staining the skin underneath with a vibrant shade of scarlet. Nothing but malice fills the gleam in her eyes.
Zachary?
Not for me, but for Miss Wright.
Zach, is something the matter?
Oh, no, there's nothing wrong. I just remembered something, that's all. Let's get back to the pictures. Can you move a bit more to the left, yeah?
The memory alone is enough to make me retch. I brushed it off then. Trick of the eye, I tell myself, or product of the heat. The weather's been unexpectedly warm recently, so it shouldn't be too surprising for such things to happen. And, well, blaming this on the usual, fatigue, an overworked brain, the weather, or an amateur error on my part is far more convenient. Makes a whole lot of sense than what the small voice inside my head whispers. The same tiny voice that only makes itself known when something's afoul. The same one that lent a curious ear to Isabella's worries about the mansion. And with each second I spend staring at this photograph, the murmurs in my head only grow louder against my ears. Someone has to know. I don't have an explanation for what I saw yesterday. Yet. But when you've been there, seen something enough to raise the hairs at the back of your neck or leave you wanting to flee or hide, finding a more solid proof than a person's smudged off face on a photo is the least of my concerns. Ashton will undoubtedly give me flack for saying that or even considering Isabella's words and those silly tales about the place. The guy is a skeptic through and through. It'll take more than my account for him to even give this a single thought. However, more than his opinion, it's Ms. Wright I'm concerned about. Surely, she must have felt something if those shows on TV are to be believed. A touch of coldness in her neck, or maybe the feeling of being watched. That's what often happens, ain't it? Outside, the sun has yet to rise. I've still got a few hours before dawn. Good enough time to mull over how I'll go about warning her. Plenty of space to check if I'll get the same result if I redo the process again. The film processor hums back to life at my touch, the light switch gives out a soft click, and darkness embraces the small closet again.
Somehow those urban legends don't sound so silly now.
In hindsight, this is a dumb idea. That is to say, rushing to a client I barely know's home, first thing in the morning, with news of a ghost lady potentially haunting their newly bought property. Oh, and there's a bunch of bizarre-looking pictures of Miss Hannah I brought as proof. So, yeah, dumbest idea in history of my dumb ideas, all things considered. Traveling to the outskirts of Anselm Village at the crack of dawn with only my bike as company, equally so. Personally, I don't think any of them would take whatever I'm going to say well, no matter how nice or accommodating they are. Ashton himself would tell me the same thing. Odds are he'll laugh at it in my face for good measure, if he doesn't freak out at me first for not listening to his warnings. Still, that's a whole separate can of worms I'll open at a different time, seeing as I'm already standing at the Wright's front porch waiting for someone to answer the door. More than anything, Ms. Wright needs to know there's possibly nothing safe in this place. Warnings from friends be damned.
If only someone would answer the door sooner. Come on.
I tried to ignore the looming presence their large ornate doors give off as I pressed the doorbell for the fourth time. Its shrill ringing merely echoes, carried off by another warm passing breeze. The first time I came to this place, I found myself basking in the silence it offers. Now the atmosphere is just heavy, packed with trepidation and tension. Isabella's right, it does radiate the creepy kind of vibe. And with the image from the day before constantly flashing in my mind, the unease becomes harder to ignore as each second drifts by. Not wanting to spend more time here than necessary, I ring the bell again. Another long second ticks by without anyone answering the door. If this fails, I can always go to Ash. Provided he's still willing to talk to me after I accidentally clobbered his jaw the other day. Not really the most sensible course of action either, but waiting here ain't doing me any good. For all I know, the Wrights could be out of town. As luck would have it, just as I'm about to turn on my heel, a loud thump rises from the other side. It's followed by heavy footfalls and a string of very colorful expletives about one's parentage.
Didn't we have that bloody annoying doorbell replaced yesterday? That Irish star just cost me a fortune and she can't even fix this nuisance. And where the hell is... Johannes, if another po-faced prat is pressing that blighted bell, I swear I'll cut that.
The door swings open and a very irate Mr. Wright greets me, his partly rumpled appearance a clear testament to how early the hour is.
And who might you be? I don't recall asking the movers to show up this early.
I was prepared to face Ms. Wright, their butler more so. But Mr. Wright, I don't quite know what to make of him yet. I only caught sight of him yesterday as he's directing the movers. Although from how exasperated he sounded then, it seemed like more yelling was done than actual giving of directions. Needless to say, I'd like to believe those instances ain't all there is to the guy. Ms. Wright, at the end of the day, did marry him. Standing before him now, though, is a different story altogether. Despite the difference in our respective heights, he manages to make it appear like he is the one looking down at me, not the other way around. An apology instinctively forms in my mouth before anything else when he arches an eyebrow at my lack of response.
Well, that's not exactly why I'm here, Mr. Wright. Yeah?
Right, of course, the one and only. And what can I do for you this fine morning? Have I seen you somewhere before? Bloody you peasants all look the same to me.
Yeah, I'm actually...
It doesn't matter. I don't care. I've got someplace important to be at today.
Yeah, he has a body in the trunk that isn't going to dispose of itself.
Just spit out what you want or be gone. I haven't got all day.
His eyes are sharp and expecting in spite of its indifferent tone. The very impression of someone whose sharp wits has served him well throughout his life. The kind you have to carefully choose your words around. disconcerting how a simple conversation can easily seem like a ruthless form of social maneuvering. I can see why Ms. Wright would want to steer clear of it, if only for a short while. And sometimes, the only way out of the game is to be honest. This will probably trigger him, so let's do it.
Sorry, sir. I was just...
So there you can see the status of their relationships. I was hoping his would go down even lower, but I don't know if you can actually hit 0.
You see, I'm a friend of Hana, and...
A friend of Hana!
Yes, sir.
His eyebrows shoot into his hairline at my answer. Although it swiftly disappears under his dismissive gesture and a chuckle at his heels. A small frown spreads across my face before I can stop myself. What I said has nothing remotely funny in it, yet here he is, hugging an arm closer to himself in a weak attempt to keep his shoulders from shaking.
Did I mispronounce something wrong, or...
No, not at all. You didn't. My wife, has never mentioned a friend like you. That's all. I suppose it's a good thing she's venturing out of the usual. Vultures and savages, all of them hiding under sheep's clothing.
I don't really get it, sir, but it's not really surprising she wouldn't talk about me. We just met yesterday during the shoot.
As soon as the statement is out, the amicable air melts away almost palpably. His eyebrows crease into a frown and his posture stiffens. With how fast the atmosphere around us changes in merely the span of a few spoken words, I'm not quite sure what I can and can't say anymore. Like hitting a ticking time bomb. Is this why Ashton wants us to stay away from them? If so, part of me regrets not listening to him now.
Shoot. Who are you again?
Zachary Steele, sir. I was here yesterday from the magazine feature about your home.
Ah, that Zachary, the photographer. I remember now. Just when you think she'd be careful meddling around media types these days, she makes friends with one.
It was really just small chit-chat, sir. The usual. To keep things entertaining. The shoot did take the whole afternoon to finish.
Oh, I'm sure she was pleasantly entertained. She wouldn't be making friends with media types if she wasn't. No matter. She's her own woman. She can do what she wants so long as she doesn't do anything to ruin herself.
I'm sure Miss Wright is aware of that, sir.
That she is. But we aren't here to talk about her, are we? What is this about today? The city is a long way from here. On push bike, no less.
I was actually hoping to talk to her.
Of course. Here for another headline, perhaps.
Not exactly, sir. I'm off work. This is for something else.
That's what they always say. The next thing you know, your face is in the front page of every conceivable scandal sheet going all the way to the ass end of Plymouth. You media types have such an insatiable taste for gossip. It's almost amazing.
There won't be any of that in an interior design magazine, sir. I can assure you that one.
Oh, you never know. Well-trained hounds have an uncanny way of sniffing out things no matter where you keep them. I do admire the passion, though. It takes a lot of energy for someone to leave bed this early, let alone knock at someone else's door at this hour. That aside, unfortunately, you're going to have to come back some other day.
Like, I'm kind of curious what the hour is. Is it noon or something, and that's why he's flipping out? Because that's still kind of early for someone like him.
You see, darling wife left not a moment ago. I have not an inkling where she went, or when she'll be back, so you're better off.
Love, is it the movers?
Ah, she's still alive. Yeah, I think she dies a couple days from now. He stops speaking altogether, and the complacent expression he has collapses on itself. Slowly, he turns just as his wife walks up to him with a step too lively for comfort, a smile too sweet to be honest. She's very likely heard everything her husband and I have talked about.
Going off somewhere.
I've got the few things I want them to transfer already. Marianne made this splendid arrangement for the music room and... Love, are you listening?
I thought you already left, Buttercup.
She musters a frown, a pout more like. The mischievous gleam in her eyes when she glances at me says all I need to know. I would have laughed at her antics if it wouldn't offend the other man. But as it is, it's better to let his wife have her fun without any reaction from me. I'm treading on dangerous grounds with them already.
Well, I most certainly have not left yet. I wouldn't be standing here if I did, would I?
Of course you wouldn't be, darling. But don't you need to be somewhere else today? Something with Marianne? Shopping, girl, things?
Oh, I'll be leaving in a few. Unless you want to join us.
Oh, no, thanks, darling. I'm afraid my liver is killing me today.
I thought as much. You needn't have to worry. I'll be gone in a few. It's just that I heard we have a visitor. What kind of person would I be if I didn't greet him before leaving?
A very gracious one, I'm sure.
Zachary, right? It's a pleasure to see you again.
Likewise, ma'am. I was actually looking for you.
Is that so? What for?
A huge display of unprofessionalism is what it's for.
Shush, darling. Let the man speak. I'm sure it isn't anything like that if he has to come all the way here, yes?
It's about yesterday. The photos you asked, I mean. The copies are ready, but...
My hand stills as I'm about to fish the prints out of my pocket. A short second passes, that which strikes me how I didn't think this through at all. How I'll go about telling her regarding the strange photos or revealing this to her in the presence of another person. Her husband gazing over us like a hawk doesn't provide any sort of comfort either. Just like that, all the words I've been practicing to say on the way here inevitably fall stiffly off my mouth. Ms. Wright must have noticed my hesitance because shortly she gives her husband's arm a gentle squeeze and a tender smile grazing her face. Unlike the first, this one is meant to appease.
Love, I think Hansi might need some of your input for the final guest list. Could you check on him, please?
Bollocks! Why in all Luxborn do I have to be there? Doing tedious jobs are what he's being paid for.
Because if we end up with people whose faces you do not want to show up in our housewarming party, we won't be hearing the end of it. Unless a heavy dose of liquor's involved. You know what the doctor said about that. Please do poor Hansi and your liver a favor,
He can handle that on his own, Buttercup. And my liver is doing just fine.
I'm sure it is. But I don't know, love. I think I caught a glimpse of the name Mitch Lakes, was it? I think it was Mitch Lakes on it when I checked with Hansi earlier. You should see for yourself. It was quite a list.
Who put that blighted twat in there?
And that's why I'm asking you to look over it before I do so tonight.
Very well.
But even with that promise, he doesn't appear ready to leave. Short of passing through their doors, he stops and glances back at me, all without bothering to hide the distrust in his eyes.
Luke, dear, I'll be fine. Go back to your butler. I'm not some pregnant wife you have to worry about.
Are you?
Fine. I have to go to that little ankle biter's career day later anyway. I don't see why I have to go there. Kylie's your goddaughter.
And yet, she has you around her little fingers, darling. That's basically the same thing.
If he ever has an answer to that, we don't get to hear it above the heavy thud the door makes and Ms. Wright's own weary exhale, after she's sure her husband is out of earshot. She's nothing but apologetic when she fixes her gaze back to me, and I can't help but return the same to her.
I am so sorry you had to deal with that. My husband can be a bit trying when he really applied himself.
It's fine, Miss Wright. No harm done. It was my fault for showing up here unannounced. And this might be strange coming from me, but he does have the right to be wary. The press can be quite vicious when it wants to be.
Caught unexpectedly, they'll pick you apart. It is not surprising why he acted the way he did around me.
Sweetie, if Luke treats every journalist who shows up here like that, I'm afraid we'll end up with a harassment lawsuit hanging over our heads sometime in the future. Vicious or not, some sort of finesse has to be exercised when dealing with them. I'm sorry, I hope that wasn't too offensive.
Not at all, Miss Wright. Besides, I don't think an interior design magazine would be interested in who harassed who this week. Unless it has something to do with fighting over tastefully arranged furniture. But even then, I don't think our readers will be too interested.
Oh, dearie. You've got a lot to learn. You really have no idea how a single tattle can ignite a spark in a crowd. Of course, at the end of the day, it's still the thought that counts. It's still a lovely anniversary gift from my husband. No matter. Let's just go.
She doesn't wait for an answer and immediately wanders over her car parked some distance away from us. Unsure, I found myself trailing after her. A chauffeur automatically opens the passenger side door as she nears, and she gestures for me to follow when she climbs into the back seat.
To... where are we going exactly?
I need to get out of this stuffy house for a while. Moving in, planning the party. It's starting to get suffocating in there. Luke and Hansi can have their fun while I'm gone. I don't care. I'm getting out because I can. Another minute in there and I'll drown.
My bike.
There are, of course, a lot of things questionable about her invitation. Why she's asking in person she's only known for less than 2 days in the first place is one. How appropriate this is being another. But the rest of it crashes the moment she shoots me an imploring look.
Please? I can have someone send it back to your address later. And it's just a trip to the city for some furniture, nothing more, I assure you. Marianne will be with us, and maybe you can tell me why you're here on the way.
Guess it wouldn't hurt. I might have to leave early, though.
Excellent, then. Hop in. That's what they often say, yes?
This can't be a good idea, but I really don't have any other choice, do I? Especially with the way her eyes light up when I agreed to it. In my pocket, the very picture of her remains faceless. A voiceless shadow hanging threateningly between us, unbeknown to her. If someone told me I'd been spending my entire morning being dragged around half of downtown Luxborn looking for furniture, I probably would have simply smiled at them. Then perhaps even given them a good friendly pat on the shoulder and wished them a nice day. Not that I find anything wrong with this at all. On the contrary, this is most definitely a nice change of pace after weeks of getting bogged down by several freelance gigs and shutting myself inside my apartment whenever I can. If only the weather would be a whole lot nicer. The kind with less sun and more clouds, perhaps. With the mid-morning sun slowly beating down on us as high noon approaches, I can see why Mr. Wright skipped out on this trip. The bright side is, the whole thing seems to have put Ms. Wright in a less somber mood. After the fifth store, her pace is considerably livelier, her gestures less guarded than the one she displayed at the mansion earlier. The presence of another person might have helped as well. Although Miss McCullough seems less predisposed to small talk, preferring to keep to herself most of the time and let Miss Wright lead us wherever. She did acknowledge me with a small nod when we were introduced earlier, but that didn't make standing outside the store together any less awkward when we wait for our client to finish her inquiry inside.
So, interior design, huh?
She cast me a sidelong glance before returning to her notes again, her pen scratching faintly against the paper in quick successive strokes. There goes that. I did say I'm not any good at starting or keeping conversations going, didn't I? She doesn't look back up again, and I take that as my cue to stop any attempt of striking a dialogue with her, and keep myself occupied with some other thing. Except what we have here is just Luxborn and its busy streets, people going about their day like normal, cars moving in and out of sight, heading to who knows where. Nothing remarkable, really. The ease with which a person can fade into the background here is reflective of the kind of city Luxborn will always be, but the humdrum's one thing I learned to live with. Needless to say, it doesn't usually stay that way. There are times when it would come alive, make itself known, and reassert itself back to the world. However, those moments are few and far between. Then again, with what graces the news channels lately, I'm starting to think it's going to happen sooner. Can't say I'm looking forward to what it'll bring.
Luxury living, is it?
Her voice effectively cuts through my thoughts just as I count the 13th passerby wearing a hat today. Beside me, I can hear the faint rustling of paper and the clicking of her pen as she stashes them back to her bag.
Excuse me, what?
The magazine you're working for. It's luxury living, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. You've been featured by them before, I take it?
A few years back, yes. For just some issues. My designs still appear from time to time, though not as frequent as before. Gotta have room for new talents, right?
It may not show in her face, but the pride is evident in her voice.
Good folks, the people running the publication. Tell me, is DK still on the editorial team?
I wouldn't know. I've only started taking jobs from them this year. Freelancer, you know.
Good man, that guy. Anyone in our field should meet him. He had a lot of things to say about art, all of them relevant. Learned a lot from him, actually, even if we both came from two different fields. I hope he's in a good place. I haven't talked to him in a while. Anyway, your portfolio must have been good if they gave you the job. They don't easily assign big features to freelancers like this.
I wouldn't say I am, but experienced, you know? The more you practice it, the more you learn the tricks of the trade. That kind of stuff.
I know what you mean. Still, you've got to keep up with the competition. Each year, a new talent emerges, and, well, you never know. Clients can be a bit fickle-minded with their choices. Believe me. Speaking of, do you think you'd be up for a new client after this?
I think so. Depends on how big the project is.
She reaches into her bag again. This time to pull out a business card which she hands over to me.
When you're free, send your portfolio to Chris. He's my assistant. He's been looking for a decent photographer to help with updating the studio's portfolio. Nothing urgent, but the sooner the better.
Not sure if I'll have the time to squeeze this in. But, alright, I'll give it a go once.
Marianne, could you look this over for me?
At that very moment, Ms. Wright emerges from the store. When I look back to Miss McCullough, a massive professionalism has returned to her. Or at least, that is what it is trying to be. There's a different light in her eyes as she faces her, a flicker of familiarity and recognition. I'd say it's fondness, but that would be too presumptuous. Whatever it is doesn't last and is briskly swept under the firm tone her voice assumes.
Definitely. Is there a problem?
They said they don't have the colors you suggested. Do you think we can change it around for a bit? It might take a while if we insist what we want, and you know I'd rather not worry about this later.
I think it'd be better if I handle this one myself. Excuse me.
She walks into the shop without another word, leaving the two of us staying outside. As soon as she's out of earshot, however, Miss Wright lets out a giggle and swipes the business card cleanly off of my hand. She smiles, a bemused little thing spreading across her face, and waves the card in front of me. I wish she'd do that more often. The smiling thing. It suits her more than the other one she frequently shows to the media.
I look away, and the next thing I know, you're picking up women. On the streets, while the sun is high, no less. I'm not sure if I should be appalled or amazed. Whatever happened to the Zach I met a day ago? About as tall as you. Photographer. Quite the gentleman. To tell you the truth, I'm a bit disappointed he's gone.
It ain't like that, Miss Wright. And I'm sure Miss McCullough is not the kind of woman to let herself be picked up by strangers, let alone people she barely knows.
Oh, shush. Let me have my fun. And didn't I say you can call me Hannah? This right after you introduced yourself as my friend in front of my husband. I do believe this isn't how friends address each other. Too formal, don't you think?
She gives the card back to me nevertheless, and with it her mood fades into a more pensive one. An odd look settles on her face, yearning, a bit wistful, as she looks back towards the shop's display window. There's nothing remotely interesting in it for me when I follow her line of sight, though. A few trinkets here and there, a fur rug, a sofa, a wooden side table, and a lamp, all tastefully picked and arranged to resemble a typical antique living room. On second thought, it does look comfortable. But why they added a crib beside it baffles me. Unless, of course, the people they're hoping to market it to are those who already have children, or about to have one, then maybe it is fitting. Peculiar choice of decorations aside, it does make for a nice icebreaker, if it's not on the same level of weird and completely out of the blue. It's still leagues better than the awkward silence, which is definitely too out of character for a personality like Ms. Hannah's. How should I start the conversation? So, let's bite the bullet.
My sister just had a baby, you know.
She tears her attention away from the window and looks at me with an incredulous expression on her face. Like I just asked her to drive off a cliff. She relaxes eventually, but I can't get that image of her like that off of my head. I hope I didn't say anything to offend.
Oh, what brought this on?
Nothing. It's just a thought. She gave birth a few weeks ago.
I suppose a congratulations is in order then.
Thanks. I'll let her know. Do you think a crib would make a good gift?
I'm sure she'd love that if she doesn't have one yet. Otherwise, maybe clothes. Or things she can use to care for the baby. You realize I'm the last person you should be asking about this, yes?
Oh, it's her first baby, don't you worry. I haven't bought a gift yet since I'm kinda new to this too, you know. The whole being an uncle thing. For a long time, it's just been me, sis, and my grandparents. Now there's a little person who came into this world as part of the family. Who'd have thought, huh?
Please don't tell me you're jealous.
Oh, of course not. But I gotta admit that very idea takes a lot of getting used to, and, scary stuff like what if I drop her or end up teaching her something bad, or I just can't stop making her cry, or...
So yeah, about the whole teaching her bad thing. As long as you don't teach her how to hotwire a car, I think you'll be okay for a while. Something warm presses against my arm, gentle as it can be, which stops the rest of my words from coming out. Her hand, I realize belatedly. When I look to her, there's nothing but warmth in her smile. She's been doing that a lot in the past few hours, and I can't help but return it to her.
Zach, sweetie. Stop. You're panicking. It's going to be fine.
I don't know, Hannah. Maybe I'm not cut out to be a good uncle.
Don't be silly. You'll probably be the best one there is. Might even make a good father when the time comes. Whoever you choose to be with will be lucky to have someone like you, I'm sure.
At this, her expression softens, sadness flitting into her eyes for a while before she looks away.
I'm the one who's worried if I'll ever make a good mother. Luke doesn't seem to even want one of our own. How pitiful is that? 7 years and we're still at this point. I don't even know what to call it anymore. Now I'm carrying this other life with me while the father doesn't want anything to do with it.
I knew it.
What am I going to do, Zach? Because right now I'm absolutely at a loss.
Oh.
A beat.
Oh!
The realization strikes me like a ton of bricks suddenly bearing down on me. More than astonishment must have shown in my face because Hannah lets out a chuckle. The slump on her shoulders disappears altogether underneath her mirth.
Don't look so surprised, dearie. Tied the knot 7 years ago, remember? Don't you think it's bound to happen?
She brandishes her hand in front of me, the unassuming silver band on her finger glinting against the late morning sunlight for a second. She eyes it lovingly, almost tenderly, despite the trace of sadness in her voice. For all I know, there's an entire story there. I'd ask, but that would be too inappropriate even for friends. It's not my place to meddle to begin with.
Or at least that's what they've been saying early on. My whole social circle would be saying it's a long time coming.
But the kid is something you want, right? Because if it ain't, then that's a whole other problem.
Of course. I wouldn't deny I've been hoping to have him or her for a long time now. But then, now that we're here, all of a sudden, there are a whole lot of other things to be worried about. Business, a new home, public image, my own husband, and I don't know. I didn't really have anyone for a role model. I practically grew up with nursemaids pampering me every step of the way. What if it happens to this baby as well? Oh, I can already see how this will end.
Huh. I guess it's not just my sister.
What?
You and my sister. I mean, you're both having jitters or something like that. That's what it's called, right? First baby jitters? Mind you, she was really convinced she'd do everything wrong then. He even called me in the middle of the night. Has to switch places the day she found out she's carrying a new member of the family. Never mind how utterly impossible her request is.
I'm quite sure I haven't done anything of that sort yet.
Oh, you don't know that? My brother-in-law's been telling me things 5 weeks into my sister's pregnancy. Since she's one cranky pregnant lady. Man, good thing I found a place for myself years before that bundle of joy arrived, huh?
Dodged a bullet there, my friend.
It can't be that awful.
Who knows? I think we'd better leave it for Mr. Wright to decide, yeah?
Provided he comes around. He just sounds so repulsed every time the idea is brought up.
Then maybe you should say it to his face. No mincing of words or beating around the bushes.
And if he says no?
You haven't even told him yet. Besides, that's his kid. Don't people usually say fatherhood changes men?
Yes, it's called gray hair.
I wouldn't call myself a living testament, of course. But there ought to be something that will hit him in that idea alone.
A wrecking ball would be nice.
Laughter escapes me before I can stop it, and for a moment I thought I've done something wrong when she doesn't join in. He's still her husband, no matter what jests or complaints she hurls about him behind the media's eyes or in the presence of people she trusts. But when she does, her chuckle, a small hesitant sound at first, I find the rest of my unease slipping away.
Well, whatever it is, my point is, you've got no idea what will happen. In the same way, you don't know if you'll be a good mom. Trust me, My sister's been there. It's perfectly normal. If, my opinion matters, though,
A long second of indecision goes by. I can feel her eyes, filled with nothing but curiosity, boring into me while she waits for the rest. It's just a simple sentiment, but one thing I think she needs to hear for all the doubts she unwittingly places on herself. I'm just not sure if it should come from me. I'll be damned.
I think you'll be a great mother, Hannah.
If she hasn't answered that, I don't get to hear it, nor does she get to say it. As soon as it's out of my mouth, the bell hanging over the antique shop doors chimes, and out comes Miss McCullough. For more than one reason, I've never been so relieved our talk got interrupted.
Everything's been taken care of for tomorrow, Mrs. Wright. We'll have everything you requested delivered early. I've left them instructions, but I may have to visit again right before your housewarming party to check for a few things. I hope that's acceptable to you.
More than Marianne. This is a little early to say, but you did marvelous work with the mansion. I can't wait to see all of it come together tomorrow.
I'm only doing my job, ma'am. Needless to say, it's always a pleasure to hear a client is satisfied with my work.
Nonsense! You have every reason to be proud. I know you've already established your name here, but I'll still make sure word gets out, of course. I think I've got a few friends who might be interested in decorating their homes. I'll see if I can introduce you to them tomorrow.
I really don't want to impose, Mrs. Wright. There's still a lot to be done, and I'd rather be keeping an eye on it myself.
You know well enough I'll still do it. You too, Monsieur le Photographe. You better be the one taking the pictures for the event tomorrow, or I'll be very upset.
I blink at her confused. Last I checked, I have nothing scheduled on my plate tomorrow. A couple of fleeting thoughts did cross my mind, like working on personal projects, but with the expectant expression on Hannah's face alone. I've wondered before how they got Isabella to sell them the mansion, with all the paperwork and the loops it has to go through. Well, now the how is already standing in front of me, and it's one giant ball of persuasion in human form. If I have any doubts how she got around life, all of them have been dispelled right this instant. Hannah hasn't said anything yet, but I already know what my answer will be.
What event?
Our housewarming party, dearie. I've already sent invites through your publisher. They should have informed you of it by now.
I may have probably missed it. I haven't gotten the chance to check my mailbox yet. Deadlines, real-life happenings, they can be pretty hectic. I'll try later, but they might have already assigned it to a different photographer if they haven't received my reply yet.
That's not a problem. Nothing a little call from me can't fix. I'll have them know I'm specifically requesting for your presence. It shouldn't be too hard. Just promise me you'll show up. I expect to see you both there. No excuses.
Good company, good music, good food. Of course I'll be there.
Lovely. I hope we have that settled then. I'd love to stay and chat, but unfortunately I have an appointment scheduled with the doctors after this. You two will have to excuse me.
Are you feeling fine, ma'am?
It's nothing big.
There is a short while in which her hand firmly touches her stomach when she says this. Her smile, as she does so, a tender thing in itself. She might never let it cross her mind, but motherhood would suit her. The kid is already loved, even when he or she has yet to have a sense of the world. Candid moments like this, I wish I'd brought a camera for.
Sorry we had to cut this short. I'd love to have lunch with you two, but, well, you two know how it goes.
It's quite fine, Mrs. Wright. I need to get going as well.
Is it somewhere far from here? I can have my driver drop you off on the way.
No, please. There's no need for that, Mrs. Wright. It's just within the city.
I see. What about you, Zach? We did leave your push bike at the mansion. Don't worry, I'll have someone bring it to your home later.
Nah, I live within the city too. A few blocks from here, in fact. I only visited earlier because...
The photos. Damn, I've completely forgotten about them. My hand grazes the side of my pockets, where I've kept them since this morning. And sure enough, they're still there, waiting for the whole world to see them.
Because, Zach, sweetie, you're zoning out.
Miss Hannah, earlier, at the mansion?
Yep.
I think it would be better if you take a look at these yourself.
Pretty as a picture unlocked. Seeing is believing, right? I reach in my pocket and pull out the photos, handing everything to her. Recognition flickers across her eyes when she reaches for them, and I have to stamp down the tiny twinge of regret in my stomach for having the gall to show it to her. Only it cuts deeper the instant both her and Miss McCullough's expression changes. And it's not a good look. To say she's repulsed would be a total understatement. All this time, Hannah has been nothing but direct, saying what she feels, expressing what she wants. Away from the glamour and the camera lenses, she's a whole different person. But as she goes through each of the pictures, I can't get an easy read on her.
Zach, dearie, what is this?
Your photos. The ones you requested copies of. I mean, they came out that way and I thought you should know.
Oh, I get it. You know, I've heard before that artists can be a bit weird. Have you ever gotten that kind of comment, Marianne?
Not in my line of work, I'm afraid. Or ever, Mrs. Wright. I'd rather keep my personal hobbies away from my actual work. Less stress that way.
Well, I suppose it just never crossed my mind that the saying applies to you as well, Zach. But talent's what's important, hmm? As long as you make good art, it doesn't matter.
Oh, no, you see, when we had that photo shoot yesterday, there was something.
I wouldn't say I don't appreciate it. I did ask for copies, darling. But would it be possible for you to give me normal-looking ones? Preferably with my head intact. I admire the effort you took to edit this, though. It looks authentic. Frankly, if I show this to some other person, they'd probably believe those silly rumors about the mansion. Good publicity, but not the kind I'd want for my new home. So please.
She drops them back in my hands like their very surface burned hers.
If you could redo this, that would be wonderful. I'm positive you can do a better job than the one you just showed. Just try to keep the edits to a minimum,
Yeah, I can, sure.
You can take your time, of course. And speaking of time, I really must go.
She leaves without so much as a wave. I would have to take a guess to know I've dismayed her, or in her own words, weirded her out. Beside me, Miss McCullough shakes her head. What are the odds I've also ruined my chances with the job she offered earlier? Very high, I'd say. It's a foolish idea in the first place. Miss McCullough departs shortly after Ms. Wright has taken her leave, muttering something about getting a quick lunch before fetching Baruthiel from Chris. I'm still not sure how to pronounce the name right there. I don't know what or who a Baruthiel is. It must be important for her to be in this kind of a hurry. And well, she doesn't seem to be fond of small talks, something we can both agree on. Lunch sounds good, or a walk around the city maybe, but with the sun as high as it is now, nah. And after how things with Miss Hannah went, I simply can't muster the appetite for anything at the moment. If I don't do anything with it now, I have this impression it will rear its ugly head again. And by then, things might be too late to fix. I made that mistake with Isabella. Look where that got us. What other choice do I have? Ash, Rebecca? In all likelihood, all they'll give me is a pat on the back and a Z-man, go get some sleep. You're at it again from Ash. There is one person, though.
Damn, I should have thought of that first.